Paul Atreides is a false messiah. He is no hero to the Fremen. He is no hero to anybody. He is a false messiah leading a religious war to kill billions, all so that he can get revenge for the death of his father. Dune is set up almost as though it is a hero's journey, but it truly is a hero's fall, if you will. It is far closer to a tragedy than it is to a hero's journey. Paul is not the good guy, and I think both the book and the movie do a really good job of framing it as though we are supposed to root for Paul, even though he is doing these terrible things. And I think the movie does a better job of framing it simply because it has hindsight of both Dune and the second book, Dune Messiah, whereas the first book did not. And with this hindsight, the movie seeks to make addendums where the director felt the book failed, and I think that is no more clear than in these first two movies, and in the way in which they portray Paul and Chani's relationship. And so for this video, I will be mostly focusing on the Dune movies and bringing a little bit of the elements from the books. So, welcome. Paul is not the hero. He is not a messiah. He is the bad guy. But it didn't exactly start like this. Paul Atreides was a Duke of House Atreides, son of the Bene Gesserit Lady Jessica. The Bene Gesserit are a sisterhood of women who act as a sort of religious group. They control the world from the shadows, and they are only supposed to have women as children. These women will be used to marry off to other dukes and kings of different households in this universe, all in order for the Bene Gesserit to maintain control from the shadows. The Bene Gesserit are known for having two abilities, one of them being able to see into the future, if only briefly, and not being able to affect said future, and another being the voice, a way in which they can command someone to do almost anything. And Paul exhibits both of these abilities at the ripe age of 15. And as Paul has started to develop these abilities, not only do the Bene Gesserit come knocking at his door to see if he has the ability to become one, but his father also inherits a brand new planet. This planet is Arrakis. In the Dune universe, it is one of the most important planets to exist, as it governs all of the spice that the known universe needs in order to function properly, all the way from the Bene Gesserit to simply flying a ship through space. And yet when Paul first arrives on this planet, he gets his first taste of being called what he would become to known as the Lisan al-Gaib. A prophecy would state that a voice from the outer world would come to Dune and would save them from their oppressors. These people believe that Paul is this voice from the outer worlds, but Paul doesn't believe it.
These people have waited for centuries for the Lisan al-Gaib. They see you, they see the signs.
You see what they've been told to see?
The Lisan al-Gaib, or the voice from the outer world, is the Fremen's messiah. He is said to bring water and prosperity to the people. He is said to free them from their oppressors. But what is interesting is that a majority of these talks of this prophet, of the Lisan al-Gaib, come from the Bene Gesserit themselves, as one of the Bene Gesserits is on the planet Arrakis spreading this gospel of the Lisan al-Gaib, of the voice from the outer world. And Paul is very quick to point it out. He doesn't believe in the prophecy because it essentially does not exist. It is a false prophecy. I think it's worth pointing out just who Paul is at this point in the story. He is, for all intents and purposes, a very selfless character. He looks out for the people closest to him. Earlier in the movie, speaking to Duncan, one of his closer friends, and warning him about his potential death. He actively gets out of the Thopper, which is the Dune's type of flying helicopter. He gets out first in order to warn the people of an incoming sandworm that will eat one of their spice collectors that has been sabotaged. Paul did this even at the great risk of himself because he believed it was the right thing to do. Paul is also very respectful of other cultures, specifically the culture of the Fremen who are on Arrakis. Now, all of this would unfortunately come to change when Paul's entire lineage would be attacked by the Harkonnens. The Harkonnens are the former owners of the planet Arrakis, and the Harkonnens are extremely frustrated by the fact that their planet was taken from them. And so they take the very first opportunity they can to destroy all of the Atreides family's havings, their belongings. They want to take Arrakis back by force, and to do so, they need to eliminate the entire Atreides bloodline, including all of their soldiers, and so they aerially bombard the entirety of Arrakis that the Atreides inhabit, burning it all to the ground. The Harkonnens kidnap both Paul and Jessica as they need to eliminate whatever is left of the Atreides bloodline, and I think it is this experience in which we see a significant shift in Paul's mentality. You see, throughout this movie, Paul has been exposed to something called spice. The Bene Gesserit often use that in order to enhance their visions. And throughout this film, we have seen that Paul's visions are being enhanced by spice. But at the same time, we start to see his character change fundamentally. I feel this event would change a majority of people. And so with the way in which this movie has it framed, we are feeling empathy for Paul. We want to see him get the revenge that he so desires on the people that hurt him. But at the same time in doing this, Paul does see visions of what would come to pass if he does go after these notions of revenge. Paul sees war, he sees death and destruction, all wrought by his hand. He sees himself leading the Fremen in a fight against just about every other house. He sees a vision of himself ruling over just about every planet in the known universe, with a mysterious woman by his side. He sees burning corpses, and this psychs out Paul, as it probably would most people. This is really the first time one of his visions have been so intense, and it is because of the concentration of spice in the sand. And it is from this moment forward that Paul decides he is going to follow these visions, that he is going to get revenge for his father and for the people that were all lost via the Harkonnens' attack. And he decides that he is going to use the Fremen to do so, as they are told to be some of the greatest fighters in the universe. But Paul's losses aren't exactly quite over yet. He now has to witness one of his greatest friends, Duncan Idaho, sacrifice himself, all for the well-being of Paul. And of course, could continue to just add on to the already traumatic events Paul is experiencing. As you can see, the movie is framing Paul in an extremely empathetic way. You empathize with him. He has lost everything that he was supposed to have and had, all within the span of a few weeks. He is supposed to be this grand messiah for a group of people that he does not know yet. And we, as viewers, want to see Paul succeed. We have seen him fall and fail through a majority of this movie. But we have also been shown that Paul himself is, for the most part, a level-headed and pretty decent person throughout this first film. It becomes very easy to root for Paul as a protagonist, as the filmmaker does a great job of playing on our emotions as the viewers. But what is Paul really trying to do? His main goal is to find the Fremen so he can convince them that he is their messiah and lead them on a holy war that will kill who knows how many people. At least Paul doesn't know at this time. All of this in revenge for the death of his father. I think it was a smart decision from a filmmaking standpoint to have Paul end the first movie making his very first kill. It will be the first time that we see Paul Atreides kill anybody in this movie. We have seen him train, we have seen him use the voice, use his visions, but this will be the first time that he actually goes through with ending someone. And it is all in an event to get in with the Fremen, to take almost advantage of their culture for the first time. It is through this that I think we begin to see the full turn for Paul in his sole ideology of getting revenge on the people that he has been wronged by. But I also think it's important to note that we see a regression of this just immediately upon meeting Chani, the woman from all of Paul's visions. Chani has a far different role in these movies than she does in the book. In these movies, Chani is almost as Paul's anchor to reality, to his humanity, if you will. And this truly stems from her love and belief for her people, the Fremen. Chani believes in her people at the utmost. And I think it's important that we note this and note why she is so different from the book version of Chani. In the book, Chani is almost exclusively loyal to Paul Atreides. She actually gives him almost no pushback, and that is something that seemed to ruffle a lot of people's feathers with the second movie that I'm getting ready to talk about. But the reason Chani is so different in these movies is because of that hindsight I spoke about all the way back at the start of the video. The hindsight that the character of Paul is not a good person. And Chani is going to be the person who has the most pushback to give Paul about the way in which he goes about doing things. And don't just take this as my speculation. No, I have a quote from the director himself.
When Frank Herbert wrote the book, and then when the book came out, he was disappointed how people perceived Paul Atreides. At the time, he felt that people were talking about Paul as a hero. And for him, he was an anti-hero. He was a dark figure. The book was a warning for him about the messianic figure. For that, he wrote Dune Messiah to make sure that people understood his intention. I had the benefit of having read Dune Messiah, so I wrote Part 2 having that in mind. That is why Chani's character is slightly different in my adaptation than in the book, and helped me to bring the initial intention of Frank Herbert to the screen.
And with that all in mind and that being contextualized, I think it's important that the movie, the first movie, started with this quote from Chani.
Our warriors couldn't free Arrakis from the Harkonnens. But one day, by imperial decree, they were gone. Why did the Emperor choose this path? And who will our next oppressors be?
It is kind of ironic that she asks who her new oppressors will be, and that the fact that her new oppressor is quite literally standing in front of her.
My father came. Not for spice. Not for the riches. But for the strength of your people. My road leads into the desert.
And with that, it's finally time to start talking about the second Dune movie. From extremely early on in the second Dune movie, we are shown that Paul Atreides is full and ready to take on the honor of being the Lisan al-Gaib. He wants to take this power for himself, all in an attempt to become the ruler, essentially, of the Fremen. He wants to gain that power in order to take revenge. That is all Paul cares about, at least at the start of this second movie.
Others, false prophet. I must sway the non-believers. If they follow me, we can disrupt spice production. That's the only way I can get to the Emperor.
Your father didn't believe in revenge.
Hell, I do.
And Paul's idea of getting the rest of the Fremen to believe in him is to fight with them and to fight by their side against the Harkonnens. And on top of doing this, Paul tries to fan the flames of his Messiah-like being as best as he can, while also trying to be fairly subtle. And Paul is, for all intents and purposes, pretty good at this, especially when he is getting help from his mother, who has taken over the role of being Reverend Mother of the Bene Gesserit
We can stop
for
them
this
together.
planet.
Bury them in the sand where they belong, so that this planet can be yours once more.
Paul specifically likes to use the ideology of giving the planet back to the Fremen as a way of getting them to work with him, to believe in him. He is manipulating them, essentially. But at the same time, he is developing a seemingly genuine connection to Chani. He seems to care about her a lot. And as the two grow closer, it almost seems like Paul's ideas of wanting to have nothing but revenge is starting to slow down a little bit, as he seems to truly begin to care for Zendaya's character of Chani. It's kind of funny in a way, even when Paul is trying his best to almost limit what he is doing when it comes to joining the Fremen and being the Lisan al-Gaib, where he almost doesn't want to be that anymore. Now that he has made a relationship with the people have already gone to worshiping him. It's kind of funny, almost in a way, that this movie somewhat parallels the 2009 Avatar movie. Yes, the big blue people, in which Paul seems to fall for the group of people he intends to manipulate and take advantage of. But the difference between that movie and this one, other than the obvious, is that Paul is still going to go through with his original plan, even as much as he doesn't want to. You see, Paul has happened to have Gurney, one of his former guardsmen, who is like family to Paul, to come back and to offer Paul a way to control the spice production, that being through the Atreides' nuclear armament that each house is given. But he also wants to see Paul take control of the Fremen to get revenge, even if Paul says as of right now that he doesn't want this.
All my visions lead to horror. Billions of corpses scattered across the galaxy, all dying because of me.
All of these people die because Paul gains control. And Paul is afraid of that. He is afraid of having that much death on his shoulders. But Chani believes in Paul. She believes that he will not go after this control that he has been envisioning, that he's been seeing for himself. But Paul sees otherwise. And we finally get another example of him sort of wanting this control. I think it's time to mention the fact that Chani does not believe in the prophecy at all in the Dune movies. She believes it is simply just another way for her people to be oppressed by the other worlds. And that's why I saved her quote from the first movie until the end of talking about that movie, as Paul is almost blinding her to the fact that he is going to be their next oppressor, as Paul's next vision completely solidifies the fact that he is going to go south and he is going to take on the voice of the outer worlds as his true persona going forward, as Paul would see the death of Chani in his vision and he wants to prevent this. But I feel it is very much worth noting that every time Paul seems to have one of these visions, it only serves to further push him along the path to becoming the Lisan al-Gaib. That is just speculation on my part that these visions are pushing him towards this eventual agenda, and maybe these visions are coming from an outside source. Again, that is simply my idea. But honing back in on the facts and what is truly happening. The Fremen's base that Paul has grown accustomed to living in was recently attacked by the Harkonnens and completely wiped off the map. And so this leaves Paul with truly only one option left, and that is to go south. Even as much as he does not want to go, it seems as though one last vision will push Paul over the edge in going to the south, drinking the worm's venom, unlocking his abilities as a Bene Gesserit, and taking control of the Fremen.
You need to see.
You must drink the water of life.
The visions once again are telling Paul that he must drink the water of life and that he must go south in order to take the revenge that he needs, in order to save the future for not only himself but the Fremen. And honestly, these visions are starting to seem a little bogus, as later in the movie we find out that his little sister can speak to him through the womb through these visions. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty sure she was speaking to him there, as Paul seems to be manipulated into drinking the poison of the worm. It's there that he sees his sister, and she similarly sees him, instructing him that everything will be okay and that he will become the Lisan al-Gaib. And of course, Chani doesn't believe a single word of any of this. In her mind, her boyfriend just drank a deadly poison and is dying, as all of her people cherish him as some sort of prophet and messiah that will lead them to peace. So she is frustrated and angry. But in order to complete the prophecy, Jessica, the Bene Gesserit uses the voice in order to force Chani to save Paul's life, to complete the ritual that will make him the ultimate Messiah. And in doing so, basically fractured the relationship between Paul and Chani. But it was through the poison that Paul was able to see not only the future, but the past. He can fully see what it takes in order for him to win the war against all of the houses, in order for him to murder billions for his benefit. And all of this he can see, but he also sees something far worse. He finds out that he himself is a Harkonnen. Not an Atreides, but by birth and by blood,
We're
a
Harkonnens.
Harkonnen.
So this is how we'll survive. By being Harkonnens.
And it is at this point that Paul takes full advantage of being the Lisan al-Gaib, and he takes full advantage of the fact that the Fremen believe him to be this prophet. And in doing so, he finally decides to ignite his holy war, even though Chani, who seems to be the only Fremen who does not believe, decides to try and fight against this. All this while Paul claims that he will be leading her people to freedom and that he will be leading them to the paradise that they so deserve, under the banner of his father's name.
Atreides, Duke of Arrakis! Erudit Dina Heshidani, Nelisan al-Gaib, Ruin di Menaruk, Ashidi!
Alright, so this is going to be the point in the video where I probably am going to piss some people off, maybe more than some people, but it is my truth as somebody who has analyzed not only all of the books, but watched both of these movies more times than I can count. And if you've already made it this far, just hear me out, please. Paul Atreides doesn't just embody the idea of a false messiah, but he also embodies the idea of the white savior. Now, if you don't know what the white savior is, it is essentially the idea that a white man specifically must come into a place, a foreign country for example, and he must take it over in order to give the people a sense of culture, in order to establish, say, intelligence for these people, establish a religion, all in the events of using those people for his own gain. I think it's important to note that throughout this entire movie, all of the people of Dune, the Fremen, have all been shown to be people of color, where Paul is the sole white man as the outer voice of the people. I mean, he quite literally made the announcement that he would lead these people to paradise if they would pledge their allegiance to his house, to work under his rule. As he says all of this, knowing the fact that the prophecy that these people believe in, that they believe him to be this Messiah of, is completely and utterly false. He is quite literally going to use these people as a tool of war in order to kill billions. And now, for those of you who have read the books, they never really go into detail about the skin color of either Paul himself nor the Fremen as a people, so this was solely a choice by the director. Now, obviously there have been Dune adaptations before where everybody has been white, but in this specific movie that I am talking about, Paul is the lead male. He is the white character surrounded by people of color, these people that he is preying on and taking advantage of, so that he can further his own gains through exploitation. Now, if that doesn't sound familiar, maybe you're not exactly an American, but at the same time, it should. It's the same thing the Americans did when they came here and took the land from the natives, when they took slaves from the Congo. There are undeniable undertones in this movie of the exploitation of the native people and their lands for the benefit of other people. And in this case, it happens to be Paul Atreides in leading them to paradise. And I want to make something very clear. I enjoy these movies. I very much enjoyed reading the books. I very much enjoyed watching these movies. These are good movies. But I just wanted to talk about the fact that we see Paul as a hero because of the way in which these movies are framed, when all of his actions instead paint him as quite literally the greatest villain of this story. And I also wanted to explain why Chani acts differently. Paul is not a messiah, and Paul is definitely not a hero, but neither am I. I'm simply just a dude who likes to make video essays and think critically about the media that I consume on a daily basis. Okay, that got pretty deep at the end there. Yeah, cutting all of the dramatic tension that I just built up with the end of this video. But regardless, this is how I feel about the Dune movies and the franchise. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore the books. I really enjoyed them, but I had my own subset of issues with them that the movie seems to be addressing, such as the way Paul is portrayed in the first book. I extremely like both of these movies, and I really just wanted to talk about them. But I also wanted to be very honest in the way in which I critique these movies, even if I know it's going to probably ruffle a few feathers, especially when I speak on the idea of white saviorism and all of that fun stuff. Regardless, I just want to take a moment to thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, leaving a like will go a long way. If you disliked the video, please let me know down in the comments below what you didn't like about this video. If you feel so inclined to subscribe, that would be welcome as well. And of course, if you want to see these videos unedited, if you want to see my full vision for them, or you simply just want to support me as a creator, I do have a Patreon, but do not feel obligated to go subscribe. Your viewership is more than enough. And now is the point in the video where I thank all of my wonderful patrons in the $5 tier or above. Those would be MCBomb27, Golden Boy 420, of course Dakota Rawson, and how could I forget Donovan Gomez. Thank you all so much, and I hope everybody who's watched this has an absolutely fantastic day.